Good day to you all out there in internet land. This is Raving Ray, and I'm back with another review. This time I'm reviewing the Superman games, and I'm reviewing them in mainly the orders they came out in. I'm going to go by the eras, like 8-bit, 16-bit, and so on. So let's talk about Superman of the 8-bit era. These games they were 8-bit games. The earliest 8-bit Superman game was the Superman the movie game that came out for the Atari 2600 in 1979. It was an Atari 2600 game, so graphics were primitive and there's nothing much else to be said. The object of the game is you take control of Superman and you must stop Lex Luthor from destroying the bridges, and you also have to repair the bridges. Plus, you have to capture criminals. And after you get all the criminals in the game, you have to make your way back to the phone booth to change back into Clark in the shortest amount of time. Of course, there are kryptonite strewn all over the place, so if Superman touches a kryptonite, he loses his ability, so you have to find Lois in the game so she can give you the super kiss and restore your power. Like I said, it was a 2600 game, it was primitive, and if you want to play it, I'm sure you could find it anywhere. I give Superman the movie for the Atari 2600 on my scale of 1 to 5 a very super number 2. It's an Atari 2600 game. It was before my time. I mean, I've seen the gameplay. For any Atari 2600 enthusiasts, go ahead and knock yourself out. For any Superman fan that are curious, go ahead and get the game, but just be warned, it's very primitive. It came out in the late 70s, so don't expect very much from that game. The next game in the video game series of Superman came out for the Commodore 64 and all the other 8-bit computer family in the mid 1980s. I'm referring to 1985's Superman the Game. Well, this game was very unusual. This game, you have two choices. You could play either as Superman or as Darkseid. And the objective, if you choose to play Superman, is to save all the citizens before time runs out. And the objective, if you play Darkseid, is to get all the citizens before time runs out. It was a very unusual game. It was designed for 2 players, but you could do 1 player versus the CPU. The game is not all that great. I mean, it's a very unusual concept at the time that you could play as the villain, kidnapping citizens. The game is divided into 6 sectors, 3 above ground, 3 below ground. It's a very unusual game. I saw the gameplay for it. I wouldn't have played it myself, but if you're a Superman fan, go ahead and give it a try. I give this game a score of 1 due to the fact that it's an unusual game. I wouldn't have touched it even if I was old enough in 1985 to play it. But if you want to do it as a Superman fan, by all means, or just do what I did, watch the YouTube gameplay footage. And next up in our 8-bit era Superman games review is none other than Superman, the Man of Steel, that came out for the Commodore 64. It came out in 1989, a year after the 50th anniversary of Superman. The game was based off the John Byrne reboot from 1986, and the gameplay features very Space Harrier-esque levels, along with side-scrolling and top-down perspective flying. Also, the game tells the story through comic book style graphics. It's a very beautiful game, and I recommend highly to play it. I give it a 3.5, probably a 4. I'm really torn between giving a 3.5 and a 4. It's a beautiful game graphically, but it also gets very repetitive quickly. It has a very annoying copy protection system where you need a special code book because the game, when you're about to play, will ask you for certain codes. It will give you a page number, and you have to look for the answer and type in the answer. And if you don't have the book, you're screwed. But I'm sure nowadays, if you can get it secondhand and it don't have the book, you can get the answers online. The next game for Superman, the 8-bit series, was Superman for the Nintendo Entertainment System. This game is very god awful. Unless you have a strategy guide or read online what to do, you really don't know what to do in this game. The graphics are horrible. The character sprites were done in the format famous in Japan called chibi, where the characters have ginormous heads and tiny bodies. And this is a Superman game that was very nefarious, where you had to get a subway pass and ride the subway. Really? Superman riding a subway. And Superman in a game riding a subway. It was stupid. And the game was also, being an NES game, had some serious spelling errors and poor grammar. But that was typical of the NES era games of that time period. The game, I played it as a kid. I saw it one day at a video rental store because, hey, I'm a Superman fan, and when you see a big image of Superman flying across the sky for the box art, what kid is not going to pick that game up? Big mistake. Like I said, the game is awful. You just don't know what you're doing, and you really need a strategy guide to tell you what to do next. And like most games that you get when you rent them, they don't have the instruction manual, so I didn't have the instruction manual to guide me on what to do. Even then, the instruction manuals are not that much of a help, even back then. So, Superman for the NES gets a solid Super 2. Even though I say it's awful, I will admit this game is a guilty pleasure, and sometimes I go back to play it. I don't know why. But I recommend to play it if you're a Superman fan and if you just want to try to give it a whirl. I beat the game by watching gameplay on YouTube, so I was able to do exactly what was to be done, and I beat the game within maybe 3 hours. The game pretty much follows the plot line from the Superman movies. You have to fight Zod, Ursa, and Non. And also, some of the storyline from Superman 3 was used in a game where you have to stop Ross Webster from loading the computer program up into the mainframe. But in the game, they misspelt his name to Loss. Yes, you heard me. They misspelt Ross. And of course, in the game, you have to find and beat Lex Luthor. The next game in the 8-bit era was Superman. Plain and simple, Superman. This came out for the Sega Master System, and it came right in the heart of the 16-bit era. The game was also available for the Sega Genesis or Sega Mega Drive for those who live outside the United States. The gameplay, just basically Superman flying around, running around, beating up, stopping various villains, and eventually you have to rescue Lois Lane from Brainiac. I definitely recommend this game for the Master System. It's fun, it's different, it's not the NES Superman. The final score for this game is a solid 4. I recommend you check it out, and any true Superman fan will love this game. Well, folks, now comes the final game in review for the 8-bit era. This game was unfortunately never released to the public, but it's available and ROM, so I'm not endorsing ROM usage or emulators, but it's the only way to play this game, and I believe this game is also available via other websites as a complete NES cart. This was just simply called Superman. It was originally going to be released in around 92, the same time that the Master System Superman game was released. But Sunsoft, for some reason, might have lost the license to the game. They were the ones that made the 1989 Batman game for the NES. Somehow, someway, they lost the license. And what they did was they changed the sprites and the background music and everything and retitled the game as Sunman. But the game, unfortunately, was never released either in its alternate title, Sunman. But one day, some person had discovered the prototype cart for Sunman. It was completely complete from beginning to end, but just never released. And they also discovered the ROM dump of the unfinished version of its original Superman form. So some skilled people took the Superman sprites from the unfinished original version and switched it over to the Sunman version, and even put back the original John Williams music for the background, and thus Superman, the unreleased version for the NES, was available to the public. I got to play this both in its Sunman form and the complete Superman conversion. The games are pretty good, a little on the difficult side, typical NES game, but it's way better than the first Superman game for the NES, that's for sure. The final score for the game is a 3. Definitely a recommend play. So this concludes the 8-bit era of Superman games reviews. The next one will be on the 16-bit era, so like and subscribe, and bye.